An entire fake army, complete with inflatable tanks, wooden airplanes, and a commanding general who wasn't even really in charge, was built specifically to trick one man, Adolf Hitler. And it worked so well that German forces defended the wrong beach for weeks after the real invasion had already begun. This is the story of Operation Bodyguard, the greatest military deception in history. Before we continue, if you're enjoying these deep dives into World War II history, please follow our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It genuinely helps us keep bringing you these stories, and we'd love to have you as part of this journey. Now, let's step back into 1943, into the early planning stages of the war's most important invasion. By 1943, Allied commanders knew that eventually they would need to invade Nazi-occupied France directly, crossing the English Channel with an enormous force to finally open a second front against Germany in Western Europe. But this presented an enormous problem. Germany had spent years building an elaborate coastal defense system along the entire French coastline, known as the Atlantic Wall, filled with bunkers, artillery positions, and hundreds of thousands of soldiers ready to repel an invasion the moment it began. If German commanders knew exactly where and when the invasion would land, they could concentrate their forces at that precise location, potentially crushing the entire Allied invasion force on the beaches before it ever gained a foothold on French soil. The Allies had actually chosen Normandy as their invasion point, a region with relatively weaker defenses compared to other areas along the coast. But keeping this decision secret from German intelligence would require something far more elaborate than simple secrecy alone. So Allied intelligence developed an extraordinarily ambitious plan, not simply to hide the truth, but to actively convince German commanders that the invasion would happen somewhere else entirely, somewhere far from the actual beaches the Allies intended to strike. This deception plan became known as Operation Bodyguard, and it consisted of several interconnected smaller operations, each designed to feed false information to German intelligence through completely different, mutually reinforcing methods. The most famous component of this deception was called Operation Fortitude South. Its goal was to convince the Germans that the main invasion force would land near Calais, the narrowest point of the English Channel, rather than Normandy, which sat considerably farther southwest. To make this lie believable, the Allies needed to create the appearance of an entirely fake army, one large and convincing enough that German reconnaissance planes and spies would genuinely believe a massive invasion force was gathering directly across from Calais. This fictional force was called the 1st United States Army Group, or FUSAG, and on paper, it appeared to be one of the largest and most powerful military formations ever assembled, supposedly containing hundreds of thousands of soldiers preparing for an imminent cross-channel assault. In reality, FUSAG existed almost entirely on paper and in carefully staged physical props. Engineers built hundreds of inflatable rubber tanks, positioned strategically in fields where German reconnaissance aircraft would easily photograph them from above. From ground level, these inflatable tanks looked almost comically fake, but from the altitude of a reconnaissance aircraft, they appeared genuinely convincing, indistinguishable from real armored vehicles preparing for battle. Engineers also constructed dozens of wooden dummy aircraft, carefully painted and positioned on fake airfields, along with landing craft made from simple canvas and wooden frames, floating convincingly in harbors where German spy planes might photograph them. Beyond physical props, the Allies flooded the airwaves with fake radio traffic, creating the illusion of massive military communications happening between units that didn't actually exist, complete with realistic-sounding orders, supply requests, and routine military chatter. To make this fictional army feel genuinely real, the Allies needed a believable commanding officer, someone the Germans would recognize and respect. They chose General George Patton, one of America's most aggressive and feared military commanders, to serve as the supposed leader of FUSAG. German intelligence genuinely feared Patton, believing him to be one of the most dangerous Allied generals. His public assignment to this fictional army convinced many German commanders that something significant was genuinely being planned near Calais. Patton himself, though privately frustrated at being sidelined from actual combat command for this deceptive role, understood the critical importance of his participation, making public appearances and inspections specifically designed to be observed and reported by German spies operating in Britain. Perhaps most remarkably, the Allies employed actual double agents, German spies who had been captured and secretly turned into working for British intelligence instead, feeding carefully crafted false information directly back to their unsuspecting handlers in Germany. One particularly valuable double agent, known by the code name Garbo, sent detailed, convincing reports to German intelligence describing the fictional FUSAG buildup, information the Germans considered highly reliable since Garbo had built years of trust through previous accurate reporting. German intelligence, believing Garbo to be one of their most trusted and valuable operatives, incorporated his fabricated reports directly into their own strategic assessments, unknowingly building their defensive plans around information that was almost entirely fictional. Beyond Fortitude South's focus on Calais, Operation Bodyguard also included smaller deception operations targeting other regions entirely, suggesting potential invasions of Norway and southern France, further stretching German attention and military resources across multiple false fronts simultaneously. This meant that even German forces stationed far from Normandy remained pinned in place, guarding against invasions that would never actually happen, unable to reinforce the real invasion point when the actual attack finally began. When Allied forces finally landed on the beaches of Normandy on June 6, 1944, the deception campaign faced its ultimate test. Would German commanders realize this was the true invasion, or would they continue believing Calais remained the actual primary target? Remarkably, the deception held. Many German commanders, including Hitler himself, initially believed the Normandy landings might simply be a diversionary attack, designed specifically to draw German reserves away from the real invasion still expected near Calais. This confusion caused critical delays in German reinforcement decisions. Several powerful armored divisions, positioned specifically to defend against the expected Calais invasion, remained held back for crucial days following the actual Normandy landings, unable to respond immediately. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, commanding German defenses in the region, had actually correctly predicted that any invasion would need to be defeated immediately on the beaches themselves, but the ongoing confusion about Allied intentions delayed the full deployment of available reinforcements. Even weeks after the Normandy invasion had clearly become the primary Allied effort, some German commanders remained genuinely convinced that a second, even larger invasion near Calais was still imminent, keeping substantial forces pinned defensively in the wrong location entirely. This continued misdirection provided Allied forces with crucial additional time to consolidate their beachhead in Normandy, bring in reinforcements, supplies, and equipment, and begin the difficult process of pushing inland through the French countryside toward eventual victory. Historians widely agree that without the success of Operation Bodyguard's elaborate deception, German forces might have concentrated far more effectively against the actual Normandy landings, potentially resulting in a much more difficult, costly, or even unsuccessful invasion. The deception's success relied on an extraordinary combination of factors working together seamlessly: physical props convincing from aerial photography, believable radio traffic, trusted double agents, and the psychological power of assigning a feared general to a fictional command. After the war, when German military records and interrogations of captured officers were thoroughly examined, historians confirmed just how completely successful this deception had truly been, with numerous high-ranking German officials admitting they had genuinely believed Calais remained the primary threat. Operation Bodyguard remains studied today as one of the most successful and sophisticated military deception campaigns in the entire history of warfare, a masterclass in psychological manipulation that ultimately saved countless Allied lives during the invasion itself. Many of the specific techniques developed during this operation, deceptive troop movements, fabricated communications, and strategic misdirection, continued influencing military intelligence and deception strategies used by armed forces around the world for decades afterward. Today, the beaches of Normandy stand as quiet, peaceful reminders of what was ultimately achieved there, made possible in no small part by an elaborate, carefully constructed lie that convinced one of history's most dangerous men to defend the wrong stretch of coastline entirely. Thanks so much for watching. If this incredible story of deception and strategy surprised you, please leave a comment below, follow our Facebook page, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more untold stories from World War II. Until next time, take care.